And we are back with another great episode of Liam Picks Fights. Today, I am excited to be joined by three returning friends of the show, all very smart guys, all who have been having a ton of success in their own right. We are very excited to bring them back to the show once again to share some of their knowledge and insights with you who are trying to cash in on not the greatest UFC card, all things considered. I think we can all agree UFC Vegas 40, headlined by Aspen Ladd and Norma Dumont, isn't the UFC card we would draw up if we were given the matchmaker's pen for the night. But you know what? We're going to make the most of this card. I'm really excited. And all things considered, for these low-level cards, I tend to have a lot of action, and so I'm excited to see how this one shakes out, to see whether or not I'm going head-to-head with my guest cappers or whether or not we're on the same side. And the same applies to my people in the chat. Appreciate you guys showing up each and every week for us, and we're going to kick it off to you guys as well and see what you guys have to say about these matchups. But without further ado, we're going to bring in our guest for the day. Super excited to welcome back once again Tajik, making his return to the show. It's been, I think, a few weeks now running. Tajik has been on the show, dropping knowledge, really, unique takes often that end up being correct. He stands against the market. Always happy to have the GOAT, Tajik Bey, back on the program. How are you, my friend?
Doing great, Liam. Thanks for having me back to the show. It's always a pleasure.
Without further ado, we'll bring in the great AJ Shulo. AJ, how you doing, my friend? AJ MMA Betting, welcome back to the program.
Oh, so happy to be here, Liam. Excited to talk with yourself and then Tajik and then the other guests that you'll bring in as well. It's like you said, it's not maybe the card that everybody wanted, but it's still another UFC card. I think there's some betting angles we could attack that we'll get into. And any week where there's a UFC event, it's a good week in my books, and it's something to look forward to. So excited to break down this card with you guys.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. And without further ado, we'll bring in Gerhardt, my man, YBB, Your Best Bet Sports Data. He's been dropping bombs here before, and he's back to do it once again. Gerhardt, we're happy to have you, my friend. How you doing tonight?
What is going on? Thank you so much for having me on. I actually really like this card. I think we have some solid prospects. There's some vets on the card. There's stylistically pleasing matchups for us to discuss, and some weightless drama. I can't wait to get into it. This is a fun card, actually. I really like it.
Awesome. And I'm glad to hear an optimistic take about this card. Like I said, I got some exposure. I got some takes. I got some props that I fired off on early. So let's see how it shakes out. Let's see if we line up on these. And the only other thing I'm going to mention before we get started is that all my content is brought to us by Prize Picks. Appreciate what they're doing. I know AJ rocks with Prize Picks as well. And I just hit on the Contender Series last time out on my Prize Picks play. Very excited to go back at it for this Thursday night football game. I'm always taking a little fun action there. So if you guys take a look, all the information that you need is in that description box below. Use promo Liam. They will deposit match you 100% up to $100. And now, without further ado, we're going to start the card like we always do from the very bottom. We'll work our way to the top. And the first fight of the night, I'm going to end up having some action on, but I'm going to kick it to my guest, Gerhardt, if you don't mind, starting us off. We've got Istela Nunes making, I believe, her UFC debut, long awaited, and Ariana Carnelosi on the other side. How do you feel about this matchup? Do you have any interest from a betting perspective? You're on mute, my friend.
Can you guys hear me now? Alrighty. So yeah, there's an angle on this, the first fight of the night that I chose to attack. So the first fight of the night, the fight is actually ending inside of the distance, 63.6% year to date. And I think that this is a bad stylistic matchup for Nunes. I don't know too much about her. It's more of a fade on her rather than a play on her. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because Carnelosi, she hits hard, she's tough, and I think that Nunes, her path to victory is going to be probably via TKO. I'm having a hard time seeing her winning a decision in this spot. And I think Carnelosi does have, grappling in her back pocket as well that she can utilize here. One of the other stats that I had pulled up, So Carnelossi, she's landing 56.3% significant strike accuracy, and she's finished 10 of her 13 wins via finish, and 9 of them come by TKO. So I don't know. I really like this fight for Carnelossi. I think that this is again, I'm not too sure what Nunes brings to the table, but the odds here, Carnelossi via TKO is plus 300, and it just stuck out to me right away, and I bit the bait on it. So that's what I'm playing in this spot.
Fair enough, my friend. AJ, is this a fight that you're interested in from a betting perspective, from a spectator's perspective? How do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, more so a spectator's perspective. I think if Carnelossi wants to make the fight easy for her, she should look to get the fight to the ground. Nunes looked pretty bad defending takedowns on the regionals, and I've seen her mounted. She's even been submitted in one of her losses. And she's coming in here on a 3-year layoff, hasn't fought since July of 2018. But with that time away, could be significant improvements. She's a young lady. She has done some work at American Top Team. It's more so investing in an unknown on Nunes. But what I will say is, going back on footage from her 3 years ago, she is a much more polished striker than the Carnelossi version that we saw back at UFC 261. She has a Muay Thai background, does Nunes. Very extensive, 54 pro fights there, I believe. And Carnelossi, she's very strong and aggressive and powerful. However, she's not the most technical, a lot of looping shots. If this fight plays out on the feet for 15 minutes, I think that Nunes could just best her, honestly, maybe get a stoppage along the way. I know Carnelossi beat Liang last time out, but she was rocked and dropped early and then taken down several times. So I do think that Carnelossi has the grappling advantage at BJJ black belt. I think she's the better scrambler of the two. But a lot of the fight footage I've seen of her going back to the regional, she mainly wants to stand and strike. So if I were to bet on Carnelossi's money line, I'm more so investing in her to come in with a game plan that she doesn't normally come in with, which is possible. But personally, it's something that I like to stay away from. So good luck to anybody who has action on this fight. I think that Carnelossi, while she's my prediction to win, I think Nunes is the better striker. So I'm definitely not counting her out by any means.
I understand that perspective as well. Tajik, are you also going to line up on the Carnelossi side here, or do you like the newcomer, Istela Nunes?
It's not that I don't like Estelle, I just don't know her, right? And I don't think she knows herself as well without being on the sauce, right? She admitted that. She said, "I did not know that I was taking metabolites," and if it's a surprise to her, then she hasn't seen herself probably without the juice, right? So it's very interesting to see what she brings to the table. But also, if you think about it. Carnelossi, in a lot of ways, is what UFC wanted out of Estelle, right? In fact, when she pulled out of her fight with Hill, Carnelossi replaced her, right? And then she went to beat Lin Yang, and right now, I think she's doing well. So, what I noticed about Carnelossi is that she's leaner for during this weight cut. So probably she's putting a lot of focus on her cardio, and she's trying to make it a more of a grappling game approach where she takes her down, Estelle down, and controls her, right? And we've seen that with Estelle being a liability, her takedown defense. From the spectator's perspective, I have an interest from betting, not so much. But if I'm doing like a Lambo bet, I'm gonna be going at something. So something crazy like Carnelossi takes her down and chokes her out at plus 1200 on FanDuel. So here you go. The pick is Carnelossi, straight bet not, but maybe if you feel extra froggy, you can go out for that submission prop at plus 1200.
Fair enough, gentlemen. Well, I'm going to end up standing alone here. I did take a small shot on Estela Nunes, and for a lot of the reasons that AJ was talking about, I think she's the much more polished striker. I think her mechanics are a little bit better. And I also think that, given that they're the same age and she's had 3 years away, there's not tape on her. I would assume that she's been making some improvements. All the evidence points to the fact that her liability was in getting taken down. If you look at even the fights that she wins, she's been taken down in some of those fights. So I agree. It's certainly a liability. It could end up looking like a silly bet. But at plus 145, Carnelossi hasn't really shown me a tremendous amount. I thought she looked a little sloppy, especially in that Liang fight, where, I was kind of expecting more from her there. I think she was a decent sized favorite. I can't remember off the top of my head, but just it didn't seem like she was justifying her price in that spot. And now we've got somebody with a lot of unknowns, but probably a striking advantage if it stays there. And, like you said, Tajik, if she comes in with a grappling based approach to this fight, maybe she's just going to be able to outmuscle her, but she's also a lot smaller. If you just look at the size, the height and reach, I think that might be able to keep distance. Especially against somebody who's a little sloppy, probably going to have a hard time closing the range. If she does get in on the hips, it's probably a wrap. She's going to get the takedown. But I did see some decent regarding. I think it was Angela Lee who finished her, who's probably one of the best fighters in the women's side of things outside the UFC. So I thought that she showed some heart and resilience. She was in a lot of really tough spots, a couple near sub attempts that she fought out of. So I think she's got some heart and toughness here, and I think she might be able to grit her way to a win. Whether that is via striking on the feet, like you said, maybe she finds the stoppage, but I think more likely she could just find some shots, outstrike her over the course of the fight, land more significant shots, and get the decision. So I'm on 1 unit plus 145 Isabella Nunes. I don't have the greatest amount of conviction in it. Like you said, there's not recent data that I could bank on, but I'm willing to take the underdog shot at fading Carnelossi based on her last performance. And based on the fact that I think she's going to be at a striking deficit, and every fight starts on the feet, so she's got a close distance to get Estella down, and I think she might get hurt on the way in. She got hurt in her last fight, so let's see how it plays out. Maybe I got a bad read there because we got 3 other smart people here standing against me. So take that for what it's worth. But I'm going to end up on Estella Nunes for the first fight of the night. We can move right along. Second bout of the night. I'm also going to take action here. I'm fired up about this fight. We've got Brandon Davis making his return to the UFC, racked up a couple wins on the regionals, and he is back in the organization. And Dana Batgari on the other side here, training with Jackson Wink, as far as I understand. And, he's got a couple quick knockouts to his name. I think he's the only guy to ever knock out Guido Canetti, finish him with strikes. So that's another feather in his cap. So I'm interested to hear how you guys shake out on this fight. We'll kick it to my man Tajik first. How do you feel about this matchup, and do you have any interest from a betting perspective?
I have an interest in this fight. I think it's a very interesting fight. But for me, the big elephant in the room is the fascination with Brandon Davis perhaps having a tremendous shot at Dana Batgiri. If you're looking at it from the capping perspective, right? Let's look some numbers, right? He was a heavy favorite against Giga Chikadze. He lost. He was near even with openness, near even against Enrique Barzola. He lost. He was a huge favorite against Kyle Bochniak. He lost. So I'm trying to understand and make sense of what it would take to justify betting Brandon Davis, and the answer is truly nothing. There's nothing in this on the paper for me that screams that Brandon Davis is gonna go and then he's a value bet and he's gonna, he has. I think he has a shot, but it's a very small opportunity win for him. I think there is also an assumption that he's gonna go out there and magically turn into a wrestler and take down Dana Batgiri, and Batgiri's ground game is so bad, his get up game is so bad. But I think it's a false narrative to follow, right? He when he fought Alateng Lee, he got taken down in the 3rd round by a decent wrestler, and he tried to shrimp. Liam, you're a BJJ guy, right? He tried to shrimp. He tried to work elbows. He tried to get into the full guard, and so he did what he needed to do in that position in the 3rd round while being extremely exhausted, and he outlanded Alateng Lee in every single round, so he won. And then the next 2 fights he wins, he TKOs people. So in my opinion, I don't understand what has to happen for Brandon Davis to win. I think his stand up is good, but he's also low volume, right? So just the pick wise, I'm gonna go with Dana Batgiri. I think he should win this one, and for Brandon Davis, picks. If you picked him, great. If you bet him, good luck, because you're gonna need it.
Fair enough, my man. Tajik dropping the bomb. AJ, how do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, it's a tougher fight to read. I think Bakari's got the sharper boxing, crisper hands, more power. Um, my trouble though with like getting behind him as like a big favorite in this matchup is he's been fighting a lot of guys that are like comparable in terms of like height and reach to him, and Davis isn't. Davis is 3 inches taller, a couple inches of reach. A guy that used to fight at featherweight, even lightweight in the past, if you go back a ways. And the other thing is like Bakary, he's got 2 knockouts, but they're to guys that have shown questionable durability in the past. Natividad was knocked out by Johns in his debut. He was also knocked out on the regionals. Kennedy, I mean, you're right. Kennedy was only knocked out by Bakary in the UFC. However, he was hurt badly by Vera, and then Vera just chose to sub him. He was also rocked and finished by Henry Briones. So he could knock out Davis. I did notice that Davis was rocked by Costa. He was knocked down by Kang. But he still hasn't been knocked out in 22 fights. And so if Bakary doesn't knock out Davis, he might not cover his line here, is what I worry about with him. Davis, he is the more varied striker, in my opinion, meaning he'll work the body and legs in addition to head strikes. Bakary's mainly a head hunter to me. Again, don't get me wrong, he's got good boxing, but mainly he's fairly predictable in that regard. And Tajik said it, I don't think Davis is a great wrestler. He's not. However, he's got more wrestling and grappling upside of the two in the matchup. He's just more willing to go there, whereas Bakary, he uses it more defensively. And even in addition to the Alateng fight, Bakary's other fight on the regionals where he lost, he was taken down and looked bad on the ground. And as you mentioned, Liam, he's been doing work at Jackson Wink, also Extreme Couture. He could have improved. That's possible. But as a handicapper, I like to judge a fight based on what we actually have seen and known. And I still haven't seen Bakary look great defending takedowns or scrambling back up. So if I had to bet a side, it would be Davis. Whichever side you have, I wish you the best of luck. But yeah, Bakary, I mean, he's exciting, but my fear with backing him is that he's maybe a bit overvalued coming off of back-to-back spectacular knockouts. So fun fight. Both guys come to scrap, but I'm going to side here with Brandon Davis.
I definitely hear that perspective for sure, my man AJ, and I will kick it over to Gerhard, trying not to tip my hand too much.
Yeah, so kind of like what AJ said, I do think that the odds are quite accurate with slight value on Brandon Davis. This is a tough fight to gauge on the Dana side just because we've only seen him for 4 minutes in his last 2 fights. And then the fight before that, he loses a decision to Haile Alateng. I do think Davis has the physical advantage over Dana. He can wrestle. He has a clearer path to victory here by utilizing that. But again, it's just not a fight that I'm rushing to the betting window with. I don't know that there's value on either side of this play. If you put a gun in my head, I'm going to say Davis via decision. It's hard to fade a fighter that's making their second stint in the UFC when they have proving grounds, and that becomes uncappable. You can't cap a second stint in the UFC. Motivation, those become uncappable variables. But I would pick him to win via decision. But it's not a fight that I'm wanting to bet on right now.
That makes a tremendous amount of sense to me. And, I did take the plunge. It seems like I'm the only one that has a bet on this fight, and that's just fine by me. I got 0.6 units down on Brandon Davis at plus 160. And I know my man Tajik won't be happy to hear that. But I also have, a couple other bets on this fight that I like. I have 0.25 units on Brandon Davis to win by decision at plus 333. And I'm looking right now on best fight odds. Davis to win by decision plus 310 is best available. So I kind of felt like that line wasn't going to last. The rest of the market was plus 300, plus 275. And I really felt like, Brandon Davis doesn't have a ton of finishing upside in this spot. That's what made me hesitate to make a full unit play on him here. But I do think that if this fight goes to a decision, I think it's easily a 50-50 type of fight. We saw that even in a fight where he outlanded Haley Alatang by so much, the reason he lost that fight is because he gave up 2 minutes and 30 seconds of control time and because he got taken down 3 times. And I think that, that's just costly errors. I think that part of the problem is you guys have all mentioned the fact that he's an excellent boxer, but the problem with boxing as a style or as a base style for MMA is that you can get taken down easily if you have to sit down to punch. And I think that, it's those reactive takedowns. It's the fact that he's going to be in the pocket. That's where you need to be in order to grab somebody's leg. That's where you need to be in order to reach for an underhook. That's where you need to be to force somebody into a clinch. And so, not to say that it's going to be an easy fight, but Brandon Davis is like the king of not having easy fights. Like the guy's run in the UFC is absolutely unreal. Giga Chikadze, that fight was like a draw at the time. And then they say it's a split, like fights the guy absolutely tooth and nail. He's one fight away from a UFC title shot now. Maybe 2. Like Giga's at the top of the division, and that was a fight that was very competitive. And a guy who had probably a bigger striking upside with more varied tools. So I think that there's no reason to believe that Brandon Davis can't make this competitive, especially if he doesn't get knocked out early. I think that obviously that's the danger here. Dana is a scary guy. He's put away a couple guys. He's put the proof to the pudding there. But I really think that Brandon Davis is next level durable. I think he's also next level tough. I think he's a dog. I think he'll fight for my money. And so at those odds, at plus 160, at plus 333, I'm willing to take the shot. And in addition, I'm also banking on his durability here. But as a hedge and as coverage, I put down 1.4 units that the fight goes to decision at minus 138. And the fight to go to decision right now, best available is minus 145. So, again, we're going to get just a small amount of closing line value there. Maybe that price will continue to move, but I really feel like this fight is more likely than not going to go to decision. I feel like these guys, neither one of them has a tremendous submission potential in this fight. Brandon Davis, even if he's getting his wrestling going, I don't expect him to find a submission here. So I think that this should be a fight that more often than not goes to decision. Willing to lay the chalk on that. And I also think that Brandon Davis has a plus side to get it done. So I'm on Brandon Davis. That's how it rolls. And we can move right along to the next fight here, which is Ludovic Klein and Nate Landwehr. And this is a fight that, people get fired up about. Nate kind of came into the UFC with a little bit higher expectations, was really competitive on the Russian scene. A lot of people have great respect and admiration for their scene. And, it just seems like the durability is slipping. He's a little bit older, especially in these divisions. I think he's 34 years old now. So, I think that the Erosa loss was really concerning. And, prior to that, the win over Darren Elkins, I really felt like a lot of that win was based on the fact that Darren Elkins got busted up in the face and continued to bleed all fight. And I really don't think that he was getting outlanded for that entire fight, and what I will say is Nate has pretty good defensive wrestling instincts. So, Ludovic in his last fight against Trezano, when he was starting to get figured out a little bit on the feet, he started resorting to takedowns instead. And granted, I had Trezano on a bet, plus 212, I think, in that spot, something like that. Let's go. Only 0.6 units, though. Should have went bigger. That's always the regret. But I think that, this is a fight where I could definitely see Ludovic Klein finding that win condition, and if you look at his career, I have it actually in my notes right here. Nate Landwehr, 3 out of 4 losses inside the distance. Ludovic Klein, 16 out of 17 wins inside the distance. And, he has one in the UFC, kind of stole Shane Young's durability, right? Like Shane was considered a pretty durable, tough guy, got hit with that. And, now he hasn't looked the same in a couple of fights, been a lot more hesitant, doesn't want to engage as much. And I think Ludovic Klein is very live to shin him in the first round here. I've seen it in the Instagram footage. He's doing them jumping knees a little bit, maybe looking for his own highlight reel opportunity, and they call him Mr. Highlight. I think that Nate Landwehr, unfortunately, is probably a highlight reel kind of guy at this point. I think that the money line is appropriate. No, God, no, I would not touch Ludovic Klein on this money line at all. And I was willing to fade him at a much shorter underdog price last time. But did I back Ludovic inside the distance? I did. I put down 1.1 units, Ludovic to win this fight inside the distance. I think that if he wins, he's going to win inside the distance. That's how he won all of his fights historically, not paying 3-1 on Ludovic in this spot. But if you're giving me near evens on his maximal win condition, I'm willing to take that shot because I do think that Nate Landwehr's durability is diminished. I think that Ludovic Klein is sharper on the feet. And I think that he's probably going to pick him apart and find an early finish in this spot. Although I would be kicking myself if I laid the 4-1 and then he gets out wrestled or something and starts to tire, down the stretch. So that's why limiting my exposure here. If anything, I'll add, maybe 0.4 units on Ludovic round 1 or KO round 1. But, I'm probably going to end up just sticking with what I have and letting it ride. Gerhard, we're going to kick it to you next, my man. How do you feel about this fight, and is there any interest from a betting perspective?
So I included Ludovic Klein in a 2-pick parlay. I think this is kind of a tough fight for Nate. He's too willing to engage in brawls. He's too hittable. This is a guy who's absorbing nearly 8 strikes per minute. He walks forward. He accepts punishment. He's the Mike Perry of the featherweight division. It's hard to back him, but he's going to bring a fun fight. What I will say, though, if you are backing Nate Landwehr, is I think that the value is on him at this closing range. At open, he was plus 185. Now he's at plus 320, closing market range. And that's huge, man. I got Ludovic Klein at about minus 275. I cap him at minus 250, but I think the line is just getting a little out of hand because Nate Landwehr, while he has taken punishment, I can see him like a slight chance. I can see him winning this fight, maybe via decision. But it's just tough. I think Ludovic, coming off of that loss, controversial loss, I must add, to Mike Trizano, I think that what we learned a lot in that loss. We learned that he has the fight IQ to go out there to close rounds, getting takedowns. And I thought that was really smart. He fought a really good game plan in that fight. This fight, though, I don't know that he wants to see the judges' scorecards. I think that there is potential for a first-round finish, and that's my prediction. But again, I don't like where the line is heading. It's just way too much love on Ludovic at this stage of the line movement.
That makes a lot of sense to me. AJ, do you feel the same way? Do you disagree? How do you feel about this fight? Do you have any interest from a betting perspective?
No, I can't disagree with you guys. You guys do your homework and you're very sharp. I do like your point about playing Ludovic, but also playing the outcome in which you think he probably wins. I think that that's a mistake that, well, it for sure is a mistake that I've made in the past. I got my own ego in the way. I used to think like, oh, this fighter wins, I'm going to bet them. But the thing is you could still bet an outcome that covers the same likelihood of that fighter winning, but also pay down a price. And so I think that your take on playing Klein inside the distance is good because that's probably how he does win. It just seems like a good matchup for him. Landwehr has terrible striking defense. His durability seems to be declining. He's been knocked out in 2 of his 3 fights. And even on the regional scene, he was rocked several times. And his come forward style plays right into the countering game of Ludovic, the sharper striker, as you guys pointed out. So I think Ludovic probably goes out here and gets a knockout. But here's the thing. He is very KO or bust for this money line. That's why I don't personally trust him this high. For him to cover this price, I feel like he has to get a knockout. And so I think that the angle that you brought up is very viable, but I also think playing some under rounds props, a lot of books actually have the under 2.5 rounds. I think that's very interesting. Also, fight doesn't go the distance is interesting. And yet you're paying a much lower price than Klein money line, yet you're still covering the outcome in which, so far we all agree on that he wins by. And it also covers the outcome if Landwehr does happen to get the knockout. I hope he doesn't for the sake of your bet, Liam. But just, hypothetically speaking, if you're playing the under 2.5 rounds, you're playing the fight doesn't go the distance, theoretically Landwehr could swarm him. I think he's got a higher output. And I don't think Klein has great durability. I think he's got better durability of the two, but he was rocked a few times by Trizano. He didn't seem to deal well all too much with the pressure. Maybe a loss was the best thing for him. Maybe he looks better than ever. He has been working at Sanford MMA ahead of this fight after all. So, I think Klein should go out here and get a quick knockout. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to play his money line. There's other angles to attack a fight like this while still covering that outcome. So cheers to you guys on taking those shots.
Absolutely. And, just to give a little bit of credence to your point as I kick it over to Tajik, 2 out of 3 losses inside the distance. And both of those losses were in round 1 for Ludovic Klein. So fight to end in round 1. Interesting look. Just because we've seen it twice before, Ludovic kind of has that bullying style. And when it's not coming to pass, sometimes he starts to fall back a little bit, and he's been finished more often than he's lost decisions. So just something to keep in mind. And honestly, that Trizano fight, as a Trizano backer, was very, very competitive, and I thought that he probably deserved the decision, but it was certainly very close. So interesting fight, and we kick it to Tajik, who is back to grace us with his thoughts on this fight. How do you feel about this one, Tajik?
I think it's going to be a great fight for the fans. Very, very entertaining. Watching the Landwehr fight is always something that is very intriguing. With him, I think the biggest problem has always been his ego more than anything. I think he's skilled, he is UFC level, but he thinks he's invincible. Since the M1 days, he walks forward through all the punches you can throw, hammers at him, he takes it, right? But UFC is a different story. He got KO'd first time, and then the second time, he tried to bring his pride back. He won, and then in his last fight, we saw it, right? Like he got kneed again, and went to a McGregor sleep. And so if you're looking at it from that perspective, it's a very easy to play Ludovic Klein. But when I looked into the Ludovic Klein's tape in his actually last fight versus Trizano, I had Trizano winning actually all 3 rounds. I thought he won it very distinctively. I didn't see anything in terms of the hype. Maybe was that his first fight? It wasn't actually his first fight. So low volume.
It was after the Shane Young knockout.
Yeah, Shane Young. He KO'd Shane Young at second fight. Okay, like no jitters, no nothing. So he took him down. Good outside trips. He didn't do anything with his takedowns. Right. On standing. He was low volume. I'm trying to find what should I be impressed with when I look at Ludovic. Is it another hype job? I don't know, but this is Landwehr is a great, is a great way to answer that, right? He's either gonna go run through him in the first round, KO him, and we're gonna get on his train, not on the Landwehr's train, but on his train, and so. But I get an impression that it's going to be a competitive fight. It's going to be a close fight. If Landwehr keeps him at range and doesn't go crazy, he just needs to calm down, right? Somebody needs to tell him. He needs to calm down. He hurt. Okay, great job. I mean, he hurt him. And Trizano threw some great shots too. But it's my opinion, right? Like, it's just like, you don't have to take it. I think he won 30-27. My pick here, I'm gonna take Nate Landwehr here. I think he has an opportunity to win it by decision. But in terms of betting, anything outside of even plus 600 is not good enough for me. FanDuel would have to do it a little bit better and make it like plus 800 Landwehr by decision, and I consider. I think we at some point what we have to see is some kind of a regression for Klein in terms of not winning by KO or stoppage, and the same for Landwehr in terms of not getting KO'd. And so I think it's probably going to go into decision. I like Landwehr in that spot. I don't think there's any value on Ludovic Klein. And as weird as it sounds, I'm actually picking Nate Landwehr. I hope this is not being recorded, right? We're not live, right?
Unfortunately, we're live, Tajik, so we're going to hold you to that one way or the other. We're either going to praise you once again, or we're going to say, Tajik,
no, don't praise me. I think it's a stupid pick, right? But at the same time, I just did not see anything to be impressed with Klein, right? And so that's great.
Did you watch his regional footage? Because I will say he's pretty deadly in terms of the kicks to the head, and I really think that's why somebody like Nate holds his hands really low and is always walking forward. And I think somebody who can kickbox pretty well with timing and distance can probably land a head kick.
That's a great point, but we talked about it though, right? It's the ego, right? He has to pick his hands up. He changed his camp. He has to put his hands up, and defend the high kick. It's with Ludovic, a high kick is a known, right? He knows, Landwehr knows, AJ knows, Liam and Gerhard. We all know what he's going to do, right? I'm assuming Landwehr's know too, so he's gonna keep his hands up, and I think he can offer a competitive fight more so than the odds suggest. And I'm looking for those Lambo bets. Narco Cop, if you're watching, this one is for you. And we're gonna go with Landwehr by decision at 600 plus 600 on FanDuel.
And if I was to go on the Landwehr side, I would maybe look at that Landwehr by KO plus 800. Not the most live outcome, but again, we did see Ludovic, resort to the wrestling a little bit when Trezana was touching him. And I don't know that he's going to be able to do that as cleanly against Nate. Nate's a little bit more strong in some of those positions. Trezana's one of those longer, lankier dudes, kind of easier to trip, if I'm honest with you. I used to love wrestling, the tall, lanky dudes for that reason. But anyways, folks, we move right along to another fight on this card. Lupita Godinez, is right back in it after getting a win over the weekend. Luana Carolina on the other side. I want to say I cashed a pretty decent plus number on her last time out. Always comes into her fights as an underdog, it seems. Doesn't seem, the most physically intimidating, kind of gets bodied around by most of the women that she's fighting. But when she is on the feet, she's normally landing some decent volume and throwing strikes. So I think that this is interesting because there's a pretty big size gap, but there also seems to be, pretty dichotomous paths to victory in this matchup. So Tajik, will actually throw up the order and switch it to you first on this matchup. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I like Loopy. I like her style. I think my last prediction about her is that was that she's gonna submit her opponent, and she did. I feel good about that. When I look into the Luana Carolina, I think it's very tough to pick her under the spot, although she does have reach advantage, height advantage, and she basically trained full camp with Lupita as a week notice, couple of days notice, up the weight class. It's a very tough spot for her. But I watched that Carolina versus Botelho fight, and the way Botelho went into the full mount was, she looked like a Damian Maya there. Oh my goodness, this was just like, was she that good? No, I think Carolina was just terrible BJJ. That was no belt, and if Botelho can do that, can Lupita? I think she can. I don't know if she can submit her under the spot, to be honest. I think she's, with Luana, with having, weight advantage, just being bigger, it's going to be a little bit tougher to submit her. But I think she's going to dominate it, and she needs the way she has to dominate it is through the takedown, standing up. There's no way I think Carolina would have a better better striking in the spot. Just having a reach on her would probably be sufficient. Loopy would need to close the distance. It's not the game she wants to play. You know what you need to do, Loopy. Take her down, and try to choke her out. And so that's it. I don't have a betting interest because Loopy is a huge favorite. It's tough to bet her under the circumstances. On the other day, if they were fought in the same class, both had the same notice, I understand. But aside of that, there is no bet here. And I'm picking Loopy to win. It's probably gonna be submission. I know, not submission. I say decision. I think she'll grind her out, and we'll take it to a decision.
Sounds like a plan to me, Tajik. And as I kick it to my man AJ, just want to shout out in the chat. We got Bunkhoot saying, "What's up? Appreciate you." And then we got Bout Better saying, "I threw a flyer on the dog here." So interesting. Let's see if AJ agrees. How do you feel about this fight, AJ?
Yeah, I think it's largely a good fight for Godinez. So I got to be honest, like I always admit when I'm wrong, and not that I predicted her not to win last fight out, I did. I underrated her wrestling. Like I knew she had a wrestling background, but my read on her from the regionals was that she just preferred to stand and strike. And maybe it was me just putting too much in the Demopoulos fight, put too much stock into that rather. But Demopoulos is, that's her game. She's a submission grappler, dangerous from her back. But that was a really impressive first round. I know that was just a few minutes, but like her relentlessness with the takedowns, I'm so biased on fighters that do that because it is such a tough pace to stifle. It creates just a good look in the eyes of the judges, and it creates more finishing opportunity, and it significantly suppresses the opponent's opportunity of finishing you. I loved her mat returning ability there. And Liam, I know you're more the wrestling guy than I am, but I thought it was beautiful that she went out there, just basically took what she thought was hers and just dominated the fight. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, to Jeek's point, I do think she's got the grappling advantage. Yeah, Carolina, she's not a good defensive grappler, right? Mounted by Botelho, submitted via knee bar by Lipski. It's not in the stats, but she actually was taken down briefly by Cachoeira there, also taken down the contenders, as you mentioned, the length range of Carolina does worry me to some extent, but everything I've seen out of Godinez, I think she's got sharp boxing. She knows she wants to close the distance. And when she gets inside, I think she could really box up Carolina. Carolina, part of the reason why I bet Lipski against her, not that I was expecting a knee bar or anything, but because of the pocket defense. She leaves her head on the center line and her chin very, very high. So I think Godinez has a lot of advantages up close. From there, she could land damage on the inside, take the fight to the ground. She could earn significant top control time, as Tajik pointed out. And yeah, I'm a little conflicted on whether she finishes or not, but I think she has enough tools to comfortably win rounds here. It's just basically like the range game of Carolina. How long could she play it? And Eileen, not that long enough to win the fight. So I think Godinez is the side here. And I have considered a play on her money line. I'm not quite there yet, but it is something that I've dabbled with in my head. So yeah, let's go Godinez.
I understand where you are coming from as well. And shout out to Danny Betts in the chat. Appreciate you. Now let us kick it to Gerhard. How do you feel about this matchup? Are you also on the Godinez side, or do you like a dog shot in this matchup?
I honestly thought about taking a shot on the dog, but that would be basically just a fade on Loopy. She's also taken this fight up a weight class, and just the short notice aspect is kind of what I didn't like. However, I do not like these odds. If I'm going to back Luana, I want her again at like plus 220, plus 240, something like that. But I don't know. I just think that Luana, I mean, she just needs to maintain distance to win this fight and avoid getting taken down. Is that going to happen? Probably not. I think Loopy has the clear advantage with the takedowns. And yeah, I think Loopy wins, but I just don't like the turnaround. I don't like that this fight is up a weight class. There's just things that I don't like about this fight. So I think as a fan, I'm gonna watch it, but I would be interested in entertaining a bet on Luana at the right price, but this is not the right price. So total pass for me.
I hear you for sure. And I have no action on this fight, just skimming over the odds. I haven't refreshed myself on the Luana Carolina tape. I've gotten to the window on her before. So I've obviously liked a little bit of what I've seen, but I think it's matchup dependent. Getting knee barred is a really bad look. It was an ugly finish. It was like total just non-grappling awareness. But what I'm looking at here that's intriguing me is just that plus 160 on the under 2.5 rounds. I think that if Loopy is able to get her down easily, then she's definitely live for the finish. And that's at least an interesting look to me on the fight. But I'm not interested in playing either of these fighters right now at current price. If Loopy goes down under that 2-1 range, that would be where I would be interested in maybe a money line bet. But I'm honestly just going to end up passing on this fight in all likelihood. Have nothing on it right now. But good luck to anybody who is taking action on that fight. Could end up being a greaser, could end up being another coming out party. I think that the fans are going to give her a lot of credit for stepping back in there on very short notice in this spot, win, lose, or draw for Loopy Godinez. So let's see what she can materialize with a big opportunity next up. Now we've got an interesting fight for me, and I haven't quite gotten myself to the window, but I've certainly been considering it. We've got Ramazan Emeev versus Danny Roberts at 170 pounds. And this is, I think one of the more compelling matchups on the card, maybe you guys will disagree with that, but I think that at welterweight, there's always that little bit of margin for error. These fights tend to start ending a little bit more. There's a little bit more weight and mass behind the punches and a lot of risk in that kind of matchup. And so this is something that I'm interested in, certainly perusing the betting markets. But first and foremost, we'll kick it over to Gerhardt for this one. We'll switch the order up. How do you feel about this matchup, Gerhardt? Do you like anything from a betting perspective? And did you ultimately get to the window?
So a play that I'm looking at entertaining in this spot is actually Ramazan Emeev via submission, which is plus 400. I know he has not won inside the distance in his UFC stint, but I think that, Roberts, he makes these questionable IQ mistakes, and I have this vision of him getting taken down and him trying to get back up, and I think that Emeev just locks up a rear naked choke. And again, this is just a vision. You can't always bet on visions, but I don't know. I question Roberts sometimes. I don't like the money line play on Emeev. So that was the prop that really stuck out to me. But yeah, it's just not really a fight that I really want to get too involved in. I do like the odds on the submission prop, and Emeev is a guy who does have 7 career finishes by submission. So I don't know. It's tough. It is tough. I do not like the layoff that Roberts has had, though. It's been almost 2 years since we've seen him in the cage, and that's off a win. So I don't know. It's tough to gauge. I would entertain a prop here, but I wouldn't include Emeev in any parlays. Just for insurance. You never know.
I definitely hear you there, man. I would not be running to the window to put Emeev in a parlay, especially at these odds, at least in my opinion. But we're going to kick it to my man AJ and see how he feels. Do you like that submission angle? Do you think Emeev has the tools to get the job done, or how are you looking at this fight, AJ?
It's an interesting dynamic. Roberts, in all of his losses, he's been finished. And then Emeev or Emeev, I think the announcers called it Emeev, but in all of his UFC wins, decisions. So it's just like something's got to give, I think that Emeev is likely to land takedowns. He's likely to earn control time. It's no secret Roberts doesn't have good takedown defense. And there are times where he's content to play guard. Not all the time, though. And I don't know. Roberts is pretty underrated to me. I definitely hear Gerhardt's opinion on Emeev. I don't really have interest in him at this line. He is at a boxing disadvantage, in my opinion. I know that Roberts is coming in here on a layup, but I think he's got better hands, more power. And I also expect him to kind of beat up Emeev's legs with kicks. Emeev has struggled with them in the past, like against Martin Zawada as well, the other competitive fight that he had. So I think that there's ways that Roberts could, dare I say, win, make it interesting, whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, I think that the takedown defense, the top control of Emeev will be too much. And as you guys also pointed out, Roberts has not fought in like 2 years. He's been injured. And then there was also, he's overseas. So, the coronavirus outbreak that has prevented him from fighting as well. So, yeah, I think from a pick perspective, it's Emeev, but it's not a fight that I'm crazy about betting.
That's fair enough as well. Tajik, is this a fight that you're invested in from a spectator or a betting perspective?
Just a spectator, please. It's very tough to bet Emeev. I think what was his fight? With Rocco Martin after this fight, he learned one thing, is that precision striking and low volume, he realized, is not enough to win the fights. He tried to take down Rocco 9 times, he failed, and so I think in his mind he decided that he needs to improve his wrestling, and it showed, right? Like after that, he goes in with Zawada, he takes him down 4 times. Zawada is, I think, takedown defense is half decent. And then with Niklas Stolce, he takes him down 4 times again. So what we're seeing right now with Emeev is actually being more efficient with his wrestling, and that's what has to be factored in. Sending up, I think AJ is right. They're more closer than it appears. And so for us to think that Emeev will outstrike or significantly or out volume or out precise, Precise him is probably a stretch. In that sense, I think he's going to mix it up. He would go for the takedowns, and that his path to victory. Straight, bet him straight is impossible. By submission, I'm listening. Maybe viable, but just in general, it's I think the most likely outcome for that is that Emeev is gonna take this one by decision, and I think. And I think Danny Roberts is under no illusion that that Emeev is not gonna try to take him down. I think he knows it. Probably gonna work his game from the back, and we will see another decision by Ramazan Emeev.
Well, I think I might end up standing against the boys once again, and not coming with a ton of conviction. Haven't gotten to the window yet myself, but I would be looking at the Roberts side if I was to take a money line play. I'm seeing plus 265 on Danny Roberts on the money line, and every book now is hanging above minus 300 on Emeev, and I could definitely see why he's maybe 2-1 in the spot, but 3-1 seems, pretty excessive to me. This is a guy who I think his durability is starting to go just a little bit. I think we've seen him start to get tagged a little bit in these fights. And on top of that, I think he's always been a little bit slow and a little bit plodding. I think that the more fast and explosive guy is Danny Roberts. Granted, he hasn't been around for a little while, so what are we going to see? He's coming back at 34 years old here, but they're both the same age. And man, I just think that given what I think is like the starting of a decline for Ramazan Emeev, and granted, I see what Tajik's saying in terms of his wrestling improvements, but I think it's been necessitated by the diminishing chin, and so I'm interested to see if Danny Roberts is able to test him in that area. Danny Roberts, I think, gets a lot of grief for his ground game. But I remember, I think it was the Bruno Silva fight. He ends up getting caught by the end of it, but he was very competitive for parts of the fight and didn't just concede when he gave up bad position. So I think that this is at least a fight that I'm interested in, seeing how this line goes. I think, again, a lot of people throw Emeev in the parlay, and if it was under the minus 300 tag, I can get that, like I said. But as it keeps ticking up and up and up, if I can get a really nice number on that money line for Danny Roberts, I'm probably going to end up taking a shot by fight time. And when I looked at those props, at what was interesting to me, Danny Roberts by KO is plus 700 on FanDuel. It's plus 575 on Bet Online. And it looks like that number has been coming up a little bit, interestingly. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how that fight plays out, but I think that Roberts is a little more live than the market does. So we'll see if I'm right or wrong. But, I could definitely see the grapple blanket path for Emeev. But, it's a nice path if you could pull it off. I think that Danny Roberts might be able to give him some trouble, especially early when he's fresh. And if he is able to do so, he might be able to, either set the tone for, taking over the fight or to get him out of there early. So let's see how it goes. But I'm going to end up picking, I think I'm going to pick Ramazan Emeev for now, but I even feel greasy about that. So check in on Twitter for my official slate before fight time. But we can move along to the next bout. We got Bruno Silva making his sophomore outing in the UFC, taking on Andrew Sanchez, tough alumnus. Had some good times, had some bad times in the UFC, and looking to right the ship this weekend. So we're going to kick it to my man Tajik first. How do you feel about this matchup? Do you find any value in this matchup from a betting perspective?
Thanks, Liam. I considered Andrew Sanchez to bet him straight, but these odds are, they're very greedy. Like one, did he? Oh, he actually opened as a favorite. Oh, wow. He opened at minus 120. Okay. I think it's a 50-50 fight. I don't see much value in betting like Andrew Sanchez at these odds. I think after the Valentin Turman win, Silva was gonna be like plus minus 200 or something like that. But we'll see. Maybe the odds will sway towards Silva later on, and somewhere towards Saturday, something good, somewhere around plus 150 for Andrew Sanchez will cook. And at that point, I think he's pretty bettable. I just don't know. I think we've seen recently Bruno Silva only once. Going like to the fourth round, right outside of the first round, actually. And so Andrew Sanchez is durable, right? He only gets stopped like in the third rounds because his cardio is not there. He gets tired. And I hope he employs some wrestling and grappling, but it seems like there is something is off with his cardio overall. He needs to. That's his main weakness right now. If he improves his cardio, I think he will have a good fight. I think he will take this one probably by decision. But yeah, don't sleep on Silva as well. I mean, he can go out there and prove me and other Andrew Sanchez people interested in betting Andrew Sanchez are wrong, and just knock him out in the first round. I think it's unlikely, and I'll take Andrew Sanchez by decision.
With that, we kick it to my man AJ. How do you feel about this matchup? And if you don't mind, we got Anaconda saying, what do you think of Sanchez decision only at minus 135? I just want to address what he said there.
Sanchez decision on minus 135. I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, I think he possesses the better round-winning tools. It's an interesting matchup. Like in a vacuum, they're both like bad style matchups for each other, right? Like Silva is this powerful striker, and Sanchez has been knocked out in most of his losses, right? So theoretically, Silva could knock out Sanchez, and it wouldn't surprise me all too much, right? But on the flip side, going back on Silva's regional footage, there's a lot of evidence of him getting taken down, getting controlled, getting his back taken. And Sanchez comes from a legit wrestling pedigree and submission grappling pedigree. As Tajik pointed out, he has slowed down as fights wear on, and it's in part because he, wants to wrestle a lot. And so I tend to side with the fighter that I think has more minute winning equity. And to me, that's Sanchez. He's a better clinch fighter, in my opinion, better wrestler, better grappler on the mats. But again, it's just like, at what point does he gas or does Silva put him out on the feet? That whole thing, right? So Silva's a guy, it's kind of tough to gauge how good he is because he's one of these guys. We saw him go in, knockouts, Turman in a round, but that was after a big layoff, right, from a USADA suspension. So it's tough to say that therefore had that fight gone on, he would have gone on and looked great, right? So and even in that fight, Turman was still able to ground him, take his back, control him against the clinch. So I even have some questions about Silva's fight IQ. I think he excels on the feet. He does have a submission wrestling background, but it's like when his opponents want to grapple with him, he's all of a sudden like, let me out grapple you sort of thing. So I think with that sort of approach, that could spell fits for him. Part of that, that could spell fits for him against a guy like Sanchez here. So in terms of if I had to bet a fighter in this fight, I would go with Sanchez, but I'm not uber confident in him by any means.
I completely understand. It sounds like Tajik and AJ are on the same side here. And so we're going to kick it over to Gerhardt. Do you feel the same way about this matchup? Or do you have a unique take on this one?
Yeah, I'm going to make it unanimous. I think there's value actually on Andrew Sanchez. Kind of like you guys pointed out, there are questions still with Silva. And then in that fight that he had with Wellington Turman, there was some grappling success that Turman had prior to him getting knocked out. So it's just interesting. You have questions about what if that fight got out of round one. Well, I think we're gonna find that. I mean, we're gonna see an answer here because I do think that we see round two in this fight. I think Andrew Sanchez moving his camp over to AKA before this fight is big. That's big news. I do think that he's going to address his cardio. And one thing that we got to note as well is that you have to look at who Sanchez is losing to. His losses in the UFC are to Marvin Vettori and Mahmoud Muradov. So, I mean, I don't know. I think all the value in the world is kind of on Sanchez. I would almost make him the favorite in this spot, but It's just tough to gauge because again, Bruno Silva, he does have that KO power. So my advice to you guys playing Bruno Silva is probably take him by TKO or inside the distance because I don't see him winning a decision here. So that's all I have to say about that fight. But yeah, Andrew Sanchez via decision is my prediction for this matchup.
All right, boys. I hate to do it one more time, but I'm going to be standing against the panel. I'm on Bruno Silva here, guys, and I got in on this bet pretty early. So I hit the minus 130. You can't find that now on the money line. He's minus 150 everywhere. And, that's closer to accurate for me in this spot. And it's just because we've seen now it's not just one time or two, it's more than once time over that Andrew Sanchez, his game will start to collapse over the course of 3 rounds. And I think that that's a big concern. I think that the concern in this fight especially is that he could be winning for 12 and a half minutes and everybody feels really good about the ticket and then he gets nuked like he has so often before in the 3rd round and it all goes up in smoke, so it could look like it's value until it's all gone. It is hard to say. I think that Andrew Sanchez, he does have the grappling upside here. We did see that Wellington Turman was able to get to some dominant positions, but I also thought that Bruno Silva showed some pretty decent composure there. I think somebody mentioned on the panel, they mentioned on broadcast as well that, Bruno Silva has wins in grappling matches over Wellington Turman, and everybody seems to rate Wellington's grappling pretty highly. So I don't think that he's just a bum grappler. I think he's more invested in striking and doing damage. And like we talked about, in the Bhatkari matchup, if somebody is really trying to strike hard and put down a lot of weight, they're there to be taken down. Makhmud Muradov, on the other hand, was a little bit fleet of foot, but I was really surprised. I kind of thought that was a matchup that Andrew Sanchez was built to win as well. And I ended up betting on Gerald Meerschaert the next time out to do the very same thing. I'm way lower on Makhmud Muradov than the market. But I think that, that was a tailor-made example. So I think that Bruno Silva has every chance to knock out Andrew Sanchez in the spot, whether he's on top in a brief exchange. If he catches Andrew Sanchez slipping in a scramble and gets on top, his ground and pound is absolutely ruthless. And I think on the feet, Andrew Sanchez holds his hands a little bit low, kind of like Nate. And I think that that's a recipe for disaster against a power puncher like Silva, who's long as well. So I think that, I probably wouldn't touch anything at minus 150 because I feel like now we're getting close to accurate. I capped him maybe minus 165 in the spot, but I think that this is a decent second matchup for Bruno Silva. I think that he's the guy that the UFC wants to move forward with, but we're going to have to see. Andrew Sanchez is trying to reinvent himself. He's making the right moves from a career perspective. So I could see why people think that this is a more competitive matchup. But I think that the better hardware, whether it's legal or illicit, is probably on the Bruno Silva side. And I think that he's probably a little more durable in the spot as well. I think it's less likely he gets finished here. But let's see how it shakes out. I think it's going to be a good fight. If it goes to decision, Andrew Sanchez is probably the look. Maybe you hop on that Sanchez decision line at plus 333. But I think that if the fight ends inside the distance, it's going to be Bruno Silva by vicious knockout. So let's see how the fight shakes. We're going to move on to Jordan Wright versus Julian Marquez. Speaking of fights that might end by vicious knockout, my goodness, boys. We got 2 guys here who aren't big on defense, but they're big on offense. So I think it should be good fun. This is the kind of fight that the UFC loves to put together. Just raw violence, mash them together like they're freaking Tonka trucks or something. But Tajik, how do you feel about this fight? Is this one that you're fired up about? And do you feel like there's any value from a betting perspective?
I'm excited about this fight. Actually, I think it has a potential to be the fight of the night. Yeah. I spoke with Z earlier and Brady, and I think there is a slight chance. I think there is a good chance actually that this fight goes to a decision. In my opinion, as unlikely as it sounds. I it's very the reason why I think that it might go to decision, which I think is the way it plays out in my head, is that it's a fireworks from the onset, and then what happens is that they get some a little bit more respect for their power, and they guess out. Both of them are not known to throw excessive volume, and what's going to happen is that what they're going to do is they're just gonna settle for a striking match. It's a very big if, right? Like if for them to take it to the decision, right? I mean, all the odds suggest that it won't, but I think if we get past the first round, we should see the fight coming to a decision. I don't know who wins this fight, to be honest. I was initially leaning towards there I go, I forget his name, towards Wright. But it's kind of 50-50 for me as far as which way it's gonna go. I know it's a yeah, it's a crazy pick. How is this gonna go to a decision and people? But that's just how I see it. If I'm wrong, I'm gonna go out there and say, hey, what, I was wrong. But I'm only GOAT.
Wow. Tajik, you got two good ones under your belt. So I'm certainly going to take that under some advisement. I won't be rushing to lay the juice at the minus 360 figure, certainly. But, I do think that I could see some finishing upside for both guys here. I haven't always been impressed by the durability necessarily from Jordan Wright. Has been sparked early before. Obviously, a little bit better durability in the Buckley fight, but still not a great visual, all things considered. So, AJ, we'll kick it to you. How do you feel about this one? And do you agree that this is a fight that could go to decision, or are you with the public, or are you all in that this is somebody's getting finished in the first round here?
I'm an open-minded thinker, so I could see it going the distance. Maybe, they're just a little bit hesitant, feeling each other out. They respect each other's power, that sort of thing. Thiago Santos versus Johnny Walker is a recent example of that. But yeah, I lean it does not. I think that probably Marquez knocks out Wright. Wright, it's in his metrics. He doesn't have good striking defense. Absorbs north of 7 significant strikes per minute. 39% defense. It's bad. Knocked out in the Contender Series by Hernandez. Knocked out by Buckley. Basically knocked out twice in that fight. He was knocked out towards the end of round one. Basically was concussed in between rounds. Then, as expected, Buckley finished him for good in that second round. So largely, I haven't been that high on Marquez. I don't think he's like a great polished striker, but he's very durable. He hits hard. He's aggressive, and he's opportunistic. Interestingly enough, it's crazy to think that all of his wins in the UFC are by sub, yet he hasn't landed a single takedown. Like, it's a pretty mind-blowing stat. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt. I think he's dangerous, like with front chokes and stuff. And I guess I wouldn't be surprised if he submits Wright, but it would more so be like a club and sub. Like, he has Wright rocked, and he just jumps on his neck instead of just, finishes him with a strike. So, yeah, I think Wright has advantages at distance. He's a little bit longer. He's the guy that's more willing to throw kicks, but I think Marquez is good enough to close the distance because Wright doesn't control distance well. And from there, he should be able to do damage on the inside and, again, probably get a knockout. So I'm not interested in playing Marquez's money line. Under 1.5 rounds is kind of interesting, I guess, just based on the fact that in all of Wright's pro career, he hasn't been over 7.5 minutes. And for most of Marquez's career, that's the case as well. But more recently, Marquez has been, playing over that threshold. So you never really know. But yeah, I think Marquez is the prediction here.
Makes a ton of sense to me. And man, tricky fight though to break down, because I do think that Julian Marquez has a tendency to give away minutes in fights, but then to win big exchanges. And for me, that makes it really difficult to interpret. But Gerhard, I'm going to kick it to you, man. How do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, so what I will say is I don't think Julian Marquez actually warrants the current price tag. Jordan Wright opened out as a plus 150 dog. That's kind of where I would align him, as a plus 150 dog. I took a stab on him at plus 213. I just think that the line's just getting way too wide. Yeah, if you're within 5 significant strikes of Sam Alvey in round one, I just there's a clear cut path to I'm sorry, a clear path to victory for Jordan Wright in this spot. Um, I think that Wright also he's very high volume himself. He's averaging around 7.49 significant strikes per minute. But he absorbs a lot. So the question and concern here is if he can survive round two and three. I give Wright the benefit of the doubt in round one and or decision. And I'm only saying that because he's going to have the height advantage, the reach advantage. He is high output. Julian Marquez doesn't strike me as somebody who's very high output on the feet. But if I'm taking Julian Marquez, I'm probably going to take a stab on him via submission in round three, round two. There's a lot of questions and concerns surrounding Jordan Wright. His fights are only lasting 2 minutes on average, through his career. So it's tough. It's a tough call, but I disagree with the odds. I think that Jordan Wright I think he can win this fight. I think it's a winnable matchup for him. And I disagree with the odds. I'm not that high on Marquez, to be honest. I might be on a boat there, but I'm not really incredibly high on him, especially at this price tag. So yeah, the pick here, I'm gonna go with Jordan Wright. I bit the bullet and I went with the dog. So
Sounds like a plan to me, Gerhardt. And, that's where I would probably be looking from a money line perspective. I'm seeing plus 220 on the Jordan Wright side of things. It would make me feel greasy to get involved on Jordan Wright, given my past predilections about him. But I will say he's done better than I expected him to do in the UFC. And I did think that he would win the Pickett fight. I think that he's got some ability to win these UFC matchups. I think that him and Julian Marquez are both some of the lower level type of guys in this division. So, I could see this being anybody's ball game, but what really is keeping me off this right now, and maybe I'll come around, it's just that durability edge that I give, pretty substantially to Marquez. The guy just seems like an absolute marauder, even in the Alvey fight. I thought he was going to lose the Alvey fight because he's so hittable, and Sam, for all his other flaws, throws off the lead hand and hits pretty hard. Sam didn't throw a lot in that fight and really disappointed me, but that was a nasty, like vicious choke. Marquez, his front headlock game is serious and he yanks people down into it. He's got a pretty decent snap down game. So if Jordan Wright starts to get tired here, because he hasn't had a lot of time in these extended fights, that would be a concern. But without any action, I won't belabor this matchup. We're going to kick it to Manon Fiorot and Mira Bueno Silva. Really good matchup here in the women's 125-pound division. We'll kick it to my man Tajik. How do you feel about this one? Are you interested in getting involved?
I'm interested. I mean, I want to see the odds, for Manon Fiorot to skyrocket, like to go even higher, go crazy, go like minus. It was actually it's minus 250 right now. Okay, well, if Mayra Bueno Silva gets somewhere around 230 and up area, I think she's definitely a good bet. I don't see much difference between both of them standing up. I don't buy into a narrative that Mayra Bueno Silva is gonna take her Fiorot down and choke her out. We haven't seen that happen. But standing up, I think she's pretty durable. I think her game is spot on. I think she can give a very, very competitive fight to Fiorot, and so. I think Mayra Bueno Silva is a good bet here at plus 230, and I'll wait until Saturday. It's only a couple of days, and so I feel confident that she will put a very competitive fight. I think pick here is going to be Mayra Bueno Silva by decision.
And time is on your side, Tajik, because last time that the fight was close to close, Manon was a much bigger favorite. Now she's actually contracted significantly on the market. So I think that suggests sharp action might have been coming in the other way. AJ, how do you feel about this matchup, my friend?
Yeah, I think it's largely a good spot for Fiorot. She's the better striker in a fight that probably is contested on the feet. As Tajik said, Bueno Silva hasn't landed a takedown in the UFC. She has a dangerous guard. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it's just tough to rely on her submission grappling if she doesn't land a takedown. I brought up the Marquez thing last fight, but again, it's just kind of like not that reliable, And Fiorot, she's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, not an elite level submission grappler, but she looks very strong. in top position and just like takedown defense wise. So I'd be willing to guess that she'd be able to stay out of danger if she's in top position, especially because I like how she gets a lot of her takedowns against the fence, which theoretically just makes it uncomfortable for the fight around bottom. And then on the feet, Silva is dangerous. She is tough. She has those very devastating calf kicks that we know work so effectively in the modern era. But I got to comfortably favor Farrow. I think she's better technically. I think her variety is more diverse. I think she's got the better footwork, better countering ability, and that should help her win those exchanges. So, like I said, I'm not counting Buena Silva out because you can never count out like such a tough fighter that will come forward and basically be fearless for all 3 rounds. You know, that last round 3, that is against Marina Moreau, she was just, not willing to quit in there at all. So expect a good fight, a tough fight, but it's one that I think that Farrow should win.
We've got a lot of action in the chat. People are lighting us up about this fight. We got opinions going both ways. A lot of people seem to think that the fight is going to go to decision, is what I'm seeing. And would you tend to agree with that, Gerhard? Is that something that you see? And how do you cap this matchup? Do you like one of these fighters? Do you think there's value to be had?
So Firo will actually complete my 2-pick parlay with Ludovic Klein. This is a tough fight. I mean, Mayra Bueno Silva, yes, she does have wins and she has great submissions, but as you guys mentioned, she hasn't landed a single takedown. A lot of her win equity is, off of her back, these arm bars, the submission attempts, and I just don't know that that's gonna happen in this spot, man. Firo, we don't know what her takedown defense is like. I don't even agree with the level of competition that she's had just yet. So I do think that there is some value on Silva because we do kind of know what she brings to the table. But I'm gonna ride the wave. I'm gonna ride the hype, and I threw in a 2-pick parlay. I just think that I like her striking. I like her upside, and there's high hopes for her in this division. A lot of people think that she's gonna be fighting for the belt someday. So I'm gonna jump on board, and we'll see what happens.
This is an interesting fight for me. I actually had a bet get canceled on Manon Fiorot. I had a parlay with Manon Fiorot and Chris Daukaus that sailed on the one end of the parlay, but ended up pushing on the other end. So it was another additional unit of straight bet on Chris Daukaus. I had many already, and that was interesting for me because once I saw how they readjusted the odds for release, I was like, man, what was I missing? And I have bet on Mayra Bueno Silva in the past. I think it was in that draw that she had with Montana De La Rosa. And so I didn't end up getting the money. I felt like the read was on, but I didn't get the money. And so maybe that just left a sour taste in my mouth. But I do think that both of these ladies are very talented. I think that this is, for me, a data gathering fight. I don't know what to make of this exactly because we haven't seen Manon tested in a long time on the ground. When she had a lot of the answers, but that was against a regional level talent that doesn't have the same kind of athleticism, in my opinion. I think that this is going to be a much better gauge of where she's at. Do I expect her to win? I do. Do I think that I'm ready to line up, certainly on the individual money line price at that -250 range? I'm not right now. But I definitely got the temptation to put her in a parlay, Gerhard. I did, see what you're talking about. I feel like she's probably going to win the fight. But ultimately, based on the lines, I think I'm going to end up staying away and sitting back and taking some notes and seeing how this one shakes out. But I'm excited for it, certainly. I think that this is actually like a fun, interesting flyweight contenders matchup. But we can move along to a weird fight. You mentioned that there's some vets on the card, Gerhard. We got Jim Miller and Eric Gonzalez here. So we got the newcomer, we got the vet, and we got a huge gap in experience here on the Jim Miller side. So I'm going to kick it to Gerhard first on this one. How do you feel about this matchup? Do you like anything here? Are you targeting it from a betting perspective?
Yeah, I'm going to make this one kind of short. I do not like the line actually on Jim Miller at -235. But I think that he gets the job done. I'm not going to be betting this fight. It's good to see Jim Miller back in the cage. I don't know enough about Eric Gonzalez to pull that trigger, but damn, +185 does look entertaining. I didn't see that earlier. It was like +160 last I looked. I do know that he throws good calf kicks. I did see that on his regional tape. I think that's a good path to victory to slow down the takedowns from Jim Miller. But it's just that experience, that gap, and I think that this is a big step up in competition for Eric Gonzalez, obviously. And I don't know. I think Jim Miller can get the job done via submission, but I just don't like those odds with these big favorites. I don't want to play that money line. I want to play like a prop to, give me a better value if I'm going to do something like that. So I don't see this fight going the distance either. So minus or under 2.5 is not a bad look, but I just don't know enough about Eric Gonzalez to feel confident in placing a wager on him. That's my take on it.
I can definitely see where you're coming from, Eric, on Eric. I didn't see a tremendous amount of footage from him in this spot. But what I will say is if you're looking for a prop to play, I do have a couple that I'm on already, which would be Miller by sub round 1, 0.48 units at plus 700. Guys, Jim Miller has 1 round of cardio. He sells out for the win in round 1. I think that if he gets the win here, that's how he's going to do it. So I'm on Jim Miller round 1 at plus 550 for a small poke. I'm on Jim Miller by sub in round 1 at plus 700 for a small poke as well. And I'm also on Jim Miller at plus 280 to win in round 1 or 2. I don't think he has a path to victory outside of that. I have seen him now more than once gas out at that 6.5, 7 minute mark. But Tajik, my man, I know you have to get out of here. We have been very grateful to have you on the program. You've been very gracious with your time as always. So just wanted to give you the opportunity to get yourself on out of here. I know you got another engagement.
Yes, Liam, and I want to take this opportunity to apologize to you, to Gerhard, and to AJ, and to all your fans and subscribers. I mean, this is the reason why, even in the case of the emergencies, short notices, anything, I love to come back on your show because it's a great show, very underrated, and good vibes. We have a great crowd, great chat, very engaged. And I want to thank everybody who is a part of this crew today, and your viewers and your fans and subscribers. I mean, definitely time well spent. But quickly, right, I want to talk about that. To me, Jim Miller is unbettable at this odds. I don't know how this fight goes. It's very tough to pick one. And do you mind if I actually get my take on Arlovsky and Felipe fight, Norma Dumont and Aspen Ladd? Is that okay?
I'd be more upset if you didn't.
Yes, thank you for that. Well, I mean, it's kind of tough because when I see Arlovsky fight and Felipe, if it was a boxing match, I would perfectly be fine headline for some mediocre boxing match because that's what it's going to be, right? They're gonna stand and they're gonna box. 50-50 here. I don't have a pick. I'm slightly leaning towards Arlovsky's, but he's unbettable either for me. But who is bettable to me is Aspen Ladd. Despite all the noise regarding her weight cut, I think she's gonna take it, and I think she's gonna, she's gonna beat Norma Dumont pretty soundly. If it was a 3-round fight, though, I think Norma would have had an edge because Aspen Ladd in round 1, she's not in that fight until round 2 and 3 and onward. So I think 5-round actually benefits her. I'm picking Aspen Ladd to win this one, and bet her however you want. I think she's a good pick overall and a good bet.
Fair enough. So we got the rapid fire insights from my man Tajik. We really appreciate it, boss. Thank you very much for your time. And always, you are welcome on this program. It's a pleasure to have you each and every time, my friend.
You're very kind. Take care, guys. Bye.
Absolutely. Be well now, Tajik. All right, gentlemen. So that leaves the 3 of us. We are going to get through these last 2 matchups. I know AJ has not had a chance yet to talk about the Jim Miller fight. Do you have anything on that matchup? Is it one that intrigues you? What are you thinking about that one, AJ?
Yeah. I understand the hesitancy with Miller as a big favorite. However, this is like his most winnable matchup in years. Literally years. I mean, this is like such a winnable matchup for him. I think he's the better boxer, better wrestler, better submission grappler. I guess if you're into live betting, if Miller doesn't get him out of there early, you could maybe look at Gonzalez if you see Miller start to slow down. But I guess I'm not totally sold here that Miller's first rounder bust. I get that that's the trend, right? Like he hasn't won a fight that went past the first round since Thiago Alves back in November of 2016. But the thing with those matchups in the meantime, it's like especially like the recent ones, like against Pichel and Selecki, it's because he's like getting taken down and he's getting grounded on his back and he's not really urgent to scramble. Everything that I've seen out of Gonzalez, he's not anywhere near Selecki or Pichel's level in terms of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He struggles to pass guard on the regionals. He's not a good damage inflictor from the top position. And, I think he'll struggle with Miller on the ground. Miller might even be able to sub him from guard like he did against Roosevelt Roberts. So kind of like some other fights we talked about, there are other angles you could target on this fight that covers like the Miller win outcome in round 1 or 2, whichever you think it is, while also like not paying that steep of a price, right? So like there's the unders, there's the fight doesn't go the distance, which I'm looking here mostly plus numbers. And I do think that this is a true like skill provenness difference. Gonzalez here has been mounted on the regionals by Rafa Garcia, submitted plenty of times. He's just like pretty wild and reckless on the feet. So I wouldn't even put it past, as crazy as it sounds, Miller to knock him out. I don't think Gonzalez reacts well to punches. So got to go with Jim Miller here. I get it that he's 38 and at the end of his run. However, that does not mean that he doesn't have enough left in the tank. I do remember backing Darren Elkins against Derek Minner, where I acknowledged that Elkins was regressing. However, I believed, and I could have been wrong there, he still didn't look great, but I believe that he had enough left to do it. And I think that that's what we see here with Jim Miller. So again, it could get a little dicey if it gets extended. However, I will say with the caveat of, I don't think he's at as big of risk of just getting controlled on his back here as say he was in other previous matchups that he had.
I definitely see where you're coming from there too, AJ. And, the way I divvied it up, I have one unit on Jim Miller, and it is split 3 ways. I have 0.48 units on him to win in round 1 by sub at plus 700, 0.22 units on Miller to win in round 1 at plus 550. And the reason being there is exactly what you said. I think that Jim Miller in that first round, when he's fresh, I think he hurt Joe Selecki on the feet. And that's why Joe Selecki was really willing to stay on his back and lay flat for the rest of the round. He's like, yeah, just grapple me. You got this one. Because he was getting touched up a little bit by the hooks of Jim Miller. And I think that that's always a live possibility when he's fresh. So I targeted that for that reason. And then I also have 0.3 units plus 280 on Miller round 1 or 2. I think that that'll cover my butt if Jim Miller doesn't get him out of there in round 1 and has to get him down again in round 2. But, that would be really scary for me. That's why I didn't invest in the Miller money line. I think if it goes over, that 1.5 round mark, that's when I start to get scared that the finishing equity is gone for Jim. And while I do rate him as pretty durable, that's something that starts to slide when fighters get older. And he is starting to teeter on that age where people get, finish a little bit more inside the distance. So something to consider. But now, as Tajik mentioned, we got a heavyweight fight. We got the sloppy one, the big boys, and they're out there. This is Andrei Arlovski at 42 years old, taking on, somebody much his junior in Carlos Felipe. And boy, Felipe has been surprising people on this UFC run. Gotten a couple wins now, split decisions, eked them out. But he just keeps finding a way to win. So he's gotten a bigger opportunity here, a step-up matchup against Andrei Arlovski, and I'm interested to see how you guys shake out on this. We'll kick it to AJ first. How do you feel about this matchup?
Yeah, the people's main event, right? Let's make this 5 rounds here. Just kidding. Interesting matchup. We know at this point, like, Arlovski's that heavyweight guy where it's like if you get past him, you're a legitimate, top 10, top 15 fighter, and if you're not, you're probably not. I'm conflicted on this one, right? Because it's like, I think we know that Felipe gets by a lot on like his optics, come forward, brawling style. He's getting outstruck per the numbers, like against Justin Tafa and Jay Collier, I guess, most notably last time. But he's still winning in the eyes of the judges because of optics, because he's the guy walking forward, taunting, being fresher down the stretch, forcing Collier to look up at the clock there to see how much time is left, right? So I don't like, I think this is as close to a coin flip as you could get. I totally agree with where the odds are. I think that there's a chance that this fight plays out considering Felipe has been the distance in all 4 of his UFC fights. He's also faced some guys that we've seen get knocked out. Even the following fight, Felipe fought De Castro, couldn't hurt him. And then we saw De Castro knocked out by Dan Hill with the following fight cold. And then we know Arlovski Since after he was knocked out by Ngannou, his only knockout loss in the past few years was to Rosenstruck. Right, he's gotten hurt a few times in there, like against Sherman, against Aspinall, but for the most part, these days he's a savvy, slick veteran. He's not too content with just brawling with you in the pocket like his prime self, I guess. So I think we see a competitive fight where I can already see it coming. Everybody thinks that Arlovsky wins, but then the judges give Felipe the split, right? So if you're asking me to pick who wins, I think Felipe wins. He's got more favorable metrics, the higher pace, better cardio, and he's much younger. Usually when we see an age gap this wide, it's a very wide gap here. I think 16 years, the younger fighter wins much more often than not. But as we know, Arlovsky's an interesting case. He's proven that trend wrong more often than not. So tricky fight to handicap. If I had to bet a fighter, it'd be Felipe, but no real interest here.
I hear you for sure. And, normally that's me, man. I am very big on looking for those age gaps to exploit. But, man, it's just cost me before with this Andrei Arlovsky fellow. He is the man that age forgot. So I've been having a tough time, making these bets against Andre. I'm now, almost tempted to line up with Andre. We're going to kick it to Gerhard here. How do you feel about this matchup?
I did some degenerate stuff on this. Actually, I took Carlos Felipe via split decision at plus 800. To your point, he is winning these split decisions. He has a fan-friendly fight style. He's very he's loud. He talks. He's like the Kevin Holland out there. People love that. He's a fan-friendly fighter. Nothing would make me happier than seeing Andrei Arlovsky knock this guy out. However, I don't know. It's like a passing of the torch kind of thing. I'm assuming, and Andrei Arlovsky as well. He's coming off of a hand injury. This guy had surgery on his hand like not too long ago, right? So I think that I think Felipe can get the job done, but I don't really want to pick a side. I just want to have some fun, degenerate lotto action on it. So at plus 800, I bit the bait on it. I'm sorry. Andrei Arlovsky, this is a guy who has not been favorited since 2015 against Frank Mir. He has not been the favorite, and we're kind of in that range where he might close as the favorite. So there might be some value on Carlos Felipe come fight time, but we'll see. And then also to note, when there is a 10-year age difference and a fighter is not making their UFC debut, the younger fighter is actually winning 68% of the time. So that's another metric that I kind of took into account for this fight. So I took a Hail Mary on the split decision, but nothing would make me happier than seeing Andrei Arlovsky win. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it plays out. But I thought I'd have a little fun with this one.
I hear you for sure, man. And, I think that those split decision props either way are definitely not bad looks for this matchup. I do think that although it's a heavyweight fight, I don't see a tremendous amount of power on either one of these guys at this point. I don't see, this lights out volume that buries somebody. It's mostly tit for tat for both of these guys, trying to just eke out every striking exchange one by one. And Carlos Felipe will throw in more volume, but I don't think that he's as talented at winning those exchange over exchange, matchups. And that's why, he gets outstruck in some of these fights, even that he wins. He's got good optics, like you mentioned. He'll talk a little bit. He moves forward. He'll throw in combination, all things that judges like to see. But, Andrei Arlovsky, man, king of the greasy decision. That Tanner Boser fight, I thought was just incorrectly judged. But, when I went back and watched it, man, it actually changed the way I started capping Tanner Boser fights. And it's because Tanner Boser, he throws a ton of leg kicks, but doesn't throw many hands. And so Andre was able to throw a few hands, each round, touch him on the chin once or twice at the end of a round and steal it based on the fact that, the judges weren't seeing much in terms of punching volume from Boser. So that's the thing that makes me think maybe Felipe has a better chance here. But then I look and I say, wait, Felipe doesn't have any of the other tools that Tanner Boser brings to the table. He's not going to throw the leg kicks to stop Andre's mobility. Andre's footwork's probably going to be significantly better, in my opinion. He's probably going to walk around him. Arlovsky will be the running man, says Bout Better. And I kind of agree. I think Andre's going to, limit the engagements here. He's going to try and engage on his terms. I think that Andre's going to have the more varied tool set. He's going to be looking for the leg kicks. He's going to be looking for knees. I think that Andre is probably the better grappler of the two. We saw Andre get bombarded by Tom Aspinall, but other than that, I don't think that Carlos Felipe has shown a really impressive ability to fight off the cage. He's been stuck there in a lot of fights. He's had a bunch of really boring fights, and granted, they were bigger, heavier, Justin Tafa-like guys, different kind of build than you see from Arlovsky, but Arlovsky's still no pushover. Maybe we see him start to slow down and regress, but the only thing I would mention to what Gerhardt's point was before about the age gap in the UFC, I think it makes a bigger difference when we're looking at the lighter weight classes, when there's a little bit more speed, a little bit more dynamism, whereas a lot of heavyweights, there's just an older average age. They don't age out as fast. They seem to, keep that durability a little bit longer. It's been surprising. Andre Arlovsky at a younger age was more likely to get knocked out than he has been in his recent bouts. So all very interesting to me. I think that, AJ hit the nail on the head. This is the people's main event. I would have liked to see 5 rounds from these guys. It still would probably be a gross split decision with a lot of cage pushing. But, give me Andre Arlovsky here for half a unit, plus 195 to win by decision. I think it's going to decision. I think Andre's got, a decent chance here. Probably won't get involved on the money line, but it looks like Andre might close a dog. If he ends up in that dog range, maybe I'll be interested in taking a shot. I've actually bet on Felipe before too, so it's not like I'm just a hater on this guy. I kind of rated him before, but I've just seen this story before, and I think Tanner Boser is a much more legit prospect than Carlos Felipe. And he got turned away by this gatekeeper. Granted, how many times can Arlovsky turn back the clock? That's the question. But maybe one more time on Saturday night for the kid. That's all I ask. So let's see how it turns out, boys. We got Norma Dumont, Aspen Ladd in the main event. But before we break that down, I just want to ask everybody still rocking with us, 26 people in the live chat. Appreciate you guys. If you can go ahead and like this video, if you haven't already, go ahead, get subscribed to the channel. Find my guests in the description box below. Go ahead and subscribe to their work. Go ahead and find them on social media. Really appreciate you guys tuning in and taking the time with us, but also got to shout out these guests that come on and give their time to the program. So appreciate the heck out of you guys as we round out the show towards the main event here. Thank you guys very much for your time, and everybody in the chat as well. We are kicking it through. We got Norma Dumont, Aspen Ladd, put together on short notice. Aspen Ladd was supposed to fight Macy Chiasson. She's been dealing with injuries. She's been dealing with a little inactivity, surgically repaired knees. She's making her return here, and she's going to be moving up a weight class, been having issues with some of these weight cutting problems, and we saw that materialize again in her last bout. So now they cancel the fight. They make it a main event. 1 week later, new opponent, bada bing, bada boom. And so, really quick turnaround here after, that weight miss for Aspen. I think this is an interesting fight, man. Tajik dropped the bomb on us. He's all in on the favorite here, Aspen Ladd. I kind of thought there might be some value on the underdog, Norma Dumont. So I'm going to kick it to you guys and see, how do you guys feel about this matchup? Starting with Gerhardt. How do you feel, my man? What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I went with the dog actually. I'm gonna go with Norma Dumont. I have her at plus 125. Just the reason being, again, we haven't seen Aspen Ladd in almost 2 years. She tore her ACL and MCL, and that was just a year ago maybe. She did miss weight. There's like a confidence issue, I feel like, almost with her. This is going to be a proving grounds for her in terms that she's going to need to get that dirt off her shoulder of the whole weight miss thing. So I think she's going to try to prove a point, but that can be her downfall in this fight. I think she's going to go out there kind of wild, and she might get caught. Norma Dumont, I'm a little bit higher on than most. I think that she has a very smart fight IQ. She has a good style. She's going to be the much bigger girl in this spot. Good takedown defense, good striking defense. I don't know. I like her in this spot, and she was training for Holly Holm, a girl, that is wrestling. So I think that she's going to be up to par, and that's Aspen Ladd's win equity. I feel like is just ground and pound, top control. But I don't know that she is going to get that in this spot. I went with Norma Dumont. I know Aspen Ladd is a great fighter. She has the better resume. But she has sloppy striking. Her entries are, I don't know that her entries are going to be there and available against a girl like Norma Dumont. As a matter of fact, Norma Dumont, this is a girl who's landing takedowns of her own. in all of her UFC fights so far. So this is an interesting aspect. I like Norma Dumont. I was going to entertain her inside the distance. I don't see it going 5 rounds. I believe that this is a first 5-round fight for both fighters, if I'm not mistaken. But
I
I
think
like the
Lad
dog in the
was
spot.
scheduled for 5, but didn't go 5 with GDR. But I may
Yeah.
be misremembering that.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on this fight. I like Norma Dumont, and I do think that she could be minus 125 favorite, minus 130. So I saw tremendous value in her at dog odds.
I absolutely understand that perspective, and I felt much the same way. We're going to kick it to my man AJ and see if he feels the same as us or if he's riding a different wave. How do you feel about this one, AJ?
Yeah, I'm pretty conflicted here, to be honest, because I agree with everything Gearhart said. Just like I feel like Dumont has been so underrated in her UFC career. Like everybody sees her get knocked out by Megan Anderson, and suddenly she's incapable of winning a fight. Well, then we see the following fight; she just absolutely demolished Ashley Evans Smith, and then she won a competitive but rather clear fight, in my opinion, against Felicia Spencer. And now it's as if like the narrative is completely flipped. It's like, oh, we underrated Dumont. And then we're maybe overrating her. That's at least my I guess bias, you could say. Like maybe I'm overrating her, maybe I'm underrating her. I think it's just tough to know exactly how good she is. Sanda background, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, brown belt, good striker. My biggest issue against Spencer was I think she had a clear sharpness advantage on the feet, but she just let Spencer into that fight in round 1. She was way too content to play the counter role. And that's what I worry against Ladd, who, isn't the better striker on paper, but is Ladd aggressive on the feet? She is. Does she have some power? Yeah, she does. She knocked down Yana Kunitskaya. So it's not as if like Ladd is completely screwed on the feet if Dumont, again, wants to be super passive, but I favor Dumont on the feet nonetheless. Ladd, as Gearhart said, needs to get the fight to the ground, I think. And it's possible. I mean, we don't know a ton about Dumont's takedown defense is the thing. We're more so kind of guessing here. And that's okay. Again, we could only work with what we got at the end of the day. But she was thrown down a couple times by Ashley Evans Smith. That's not in the stats, but that was in the tape. And then round 3 against Spencer, I did not like what I saw there. She got tired. Was it because of a botched weight cut? I don't know. I mean, I say that because she came on really strong there in round 3 against Smith, got a 10-8 round, but still a concern nonetheless, was just so content to be on her back against Spencer after losing a scramble there. So I trust Ladd as the fighter that's more willing to do stuff in top position, ground and pound, advance in a mount. Interestingly enough, with Ladd, she's been able to secure mount in all of her UFC wins. And I know a lot of us are very high on Sijara Eubanks in the community right now. A lot of us were very high on her against Carolina. She was able to put Sijara in some deep submission attempts. And as you guys brought up, Dumont's larger, but Sijara's a legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. So I definitely think that Ladd's physicality, her aggression could spell fits for Dumont, especially if she gasses again. So I would rather take Ladd, to be honest with you. I respect Gearhart's opinion a ton. Again, I'm one of those people that has been higher on Dumont than the market, but there comes a point, it's just like, at what point am I overvaluing her, right? Is this a spot? It could be. It just seemed like a lot of the community was very high on Ladd, and it's just like, there's the ACL injury, the MCL injury, there's the weight cut, but to me, it's just tough to quantify that stuff, right? She could have improved significantly in this time off. She works at a good camp. She's young. She has like all the skills of people being hyped about her. So we need to see her put everything together. I more or less am kind of guessing here, taking an educated guess. At least I am. So I believe in Ladd more of the two. I would rather play her if I had to play a fighter's money line. But as I, don't want to get away too much from my initial point of, I don't have a great read on this fight because there's just not a ton of footage of Dumont defending takedowns. And I feel like that's a crucial component to handicapping this fight.
That makes a lot of sense to me, AJ. And, just looking at some of the stuff that I see on paper, it's actually what makes me lean towards the Norma side. You mentioned Aspen Ladd having success against Sijara, and I do think that is very impressive. I do think her, physicality has a lot to do with her success. I think there's a reason that she likes cutting down to 135. It gives her a significant size advantage. And just speaking from personal experience, going out there feeling bigger than everybody, stronger than everybody, it's a good feeling. And it helps your confidence and everything else. And, sort of the point that Gerhard had raised, I think it was about the confidence and, sort of that motivation. How's she going to come out after the 2 years off, all those kind of things. I think all of that combined with the fact that, now she's taking on somebody who's going to be at height parity or a little bit taller, who's going to be at reach parity or a little bit longer, who's going to, it's just like, I feel like that is not something that bodes well for the general recipe of an Aspen Ladd fight. On top of that, you mentioned the Yana Kunitskaya fight. Really concerning performance for me, honestly. I thought that she was losing a lot of those minutes at various times, and certainly keeping them competitive with Yana, getting turned back and forth against the cage. And I just remember watching that fight thinking a lot of chaos, a lot of openness, not a lot of, nothing tight, nothing precise, a lot of loopiness all over the place. I feel like that kind of style could get her caught by somebody who's probably more naturally powerful in Norma Dumont. But granted, I could also see how if Aspen gets on top, this fight could look, like a squash match for Aspen. But I think she's going to have to work to get on top. I don't think anything's going to come easy. I think it's more likely that Aspen gets tired in this matchup than previous matchups because it's hard to exert a wrestling forward, a grappling heavy game plan on somebody bigger, heavier, and stronger than you, and it will wear on you faster. So I think it's going to be an interesting fight. I think that this is certainly a more interesting matchup for Aspen Ladd. And I was considering a bet on the Macy Chiasson side, because of, again, she's a big, long, tall girl who's physical, who can match her in some of those physical components, and who, if she keeps it on the feet, can make it really competitive. I think that obviously, we want to see Dumont sprawl and brawl in this spot, but I think that it's going to be competitive one way or the other. I don't think this is going to be the kind of walkover that Aspen Ladd is used to. And Tajik thinks the complete opposite. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt and remember that this is one man's opinion. Me and Gerhard are in on this, but Tajik, AJ, two other smart guys who look at this the same way we do. They're saying, not so fast. We're on the Aspen Ladd side. So just letting everybody know that there's multiple ways to look at this. Appreciate the diverse perspectives that we've had on the show, but I'm not going to belabor the point anymore. I'm going to kick it to my man, AJ. I'm going to say thank you so much for coming on, and I'm going to ask you to share with the people, where can they find your work and, anything that you want to get off your chest before you get out of here, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Liam. It's always a pleasure to talk with you guys. It's been a pleasure, honestly. I love hopping on, talking fights. I'm very passionate about it. So any opportunity, I love it. Twitter, AJ MMA Betting, AJ MMA Betting.com website. All the breakdowns are posted, podcast written. Also, Bellator should be up tonight. Posted the main event breakdown, or not yet. Have it written up. Need to edit it. Bellator, UFC. Good luck to everybody in the chat. All the viewers after the fact. Gerhard, Tajik, Liam, everybody watching. God bless all of you. Let's do this thing.
I love it, AJ. Thank you very much for the positive messages on the way out, and appreciate you mentioning everybody in the chat as well. Thank you guys all so much for your participation. The show would not be what it is without all of you guys. Also, Gerhard, my man, making his triumphant return. Once again, you killed it, brother. Thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate you being here, boss. Let the people know where they can find you, my friend.
Well, I make up just 1/3 of the logo at YBB Sports Data. I'm just the guy that talks about MMA. I don't handle anything else. So thank you so much for having me on the show. This is only my second appearance on a YouTube live stream. And I'm happy to say that both are with you. And I love that we had disagreements. We got perspectives from both sides of the story. It was super awesome. Thank you for having me on, and I can't wait till the next one.
Absolutely, man. The pleasure is all mine. Everybody, so I don't mind if you're with me. I don't mind if you're against me. I just hope that you guys all have a very good time watching these fights. I hope that if you choose to gamble, you do so legally and responsibly. I hope that if you guys are interested in my work, you'll check it out on my Twitter account at Liam Picks Fights. You'll find me on Instagram at Liam Picks Fights. You'll subscribe to this channel. You'll go ahead and like this video. It means a tremendous amount to me when you do. So thank you guys all for supporting this work. Thank you guys for tuning into the show. Hopefully we can win some tickets here. Been on a very good streak on the show, trying to keep the ball rolling, just hit on another Contender Series. You don't want to miss Tuesdays with me and Gordo. And just so you guys know, if you want to know what's next for me, I will be going on tomorrow night live with Gordo Gambles. I will also be going on with Narco Cop as well. So stay tuned. You can find the full schedule on Twitter, but really excited to get that going. So thank you guys all so much for tuning in. God bless you all. Enjoy those fights. And until next time, come back again. We'll have all the same fun. Thanks, guys. Take care.